Okay, welcome to this particular part of the project. We're now into phase 2 of the project. You've set it all up, you have got it running, you know how to run it, and you can see the data that's being recorded. You've learned how to graph the data, and now you're going to learn how to change some of the settings in the program so that you can begin improving the quality and the steadiness of the temperature. We're trying to find the most steady settings so the temperature remains as close to the target temperature as possible. When we'd originally set this up, we had programmed it so that the heater would turn on when you were below the target temperature and it would turn off when you were above the target temperature. But what we found was that the heater is pretty powerful and the tank is pretty small, and the heater would heat the water too high. It would overshoot the target before it had a chance to turn off. And then when it turned off, it would undershoot the target. And so you had this sort of sawtooth pattern in the data that I was showing you. And our goal now is to try to change some of these settings so that we can smooth out that sawtooth. So what we did is we said, if you are below the target temperature and you should be turning the heater on, we're going to have you turn it on or off some fraction of the next 10 temperature cycles. Remember, each cycle is 15 seconds. So if I have my settings at 2, for example, and we're below the target temp, the heater will go on for 2 of the next 10 temperature cycles so that it doesn't overshoot. But it could also result in me undershooting, like I showed you in some of the initial graphs. So your job is going to be to run this experiment, find the settings that give you the most steady temperature, somewhere between 1 and 10. 10 would be whenever you're below the temperature, the target temp, turn the heater on. A 0 would be whenever you're below the target temp, never turn the heater on. We don't want to do that. So somewhere between 1 and 10 are going to be your settings. Let me show you now how to crack open the node that'll do that for you, and you'll be on your way. So here we go. I've got the program up and running. There's a variety of nodes, and you'll see click here to set global variables. If you open up that node, you'll see some programming. There's the gray text are what are called comments, and so it tells you sort of what's going on. Here's where we set the maximum temperature, which is 34 degrees Celsius. Here's our minimum temperature of 27. And then there's the percent on for mode 1, mode 2, and mode 3. And it's the number, how many of the next 10 temperature cycles should the heater be on if you're below the target temperature. So in this case, I am set to 2. Be on 2 of the next 10 cycles if we're below the temperature. You could change it to anything you want, and this is where your real job is going to take place. You're going to set it to some values. I would suggest you start at 2. Run the experiment over a day. Look at the data. See how the data looks. Then you might go and set it to 10. All you have to do is just click in there, change it to 10, for example. That means it's going to be on for every temperature cycle if it's below the target temp, which was our original programming, and you'll be able to see, I think, how it overshoots if you do that. So once you've got that and the gray text or the comments that explains what's going on, go up here to Done, hit Deploy, come down here, start your experiment, right? There you go. And so you want to take note of what your settings are. And when you graph the data, finally, you're going to want to make a note in the title of what the settings are, like temp sensor 1, June 10th, 2020, 2-3-6, right? Which is a setting of 2 for the first mode, a setting of 3 for the second mode, a setting of 6 for the third mode, so that you can remember what the settings were when you look at that graph, and that'll help you decide what kind of changes and adjustments you want to make. And that's how the game is played. And it will take several days, right? Because every day is one run. That's why you want to have good attention to detail and make sure you don't forget what your settings were. Otherwise, you're going to have to go spend a whole other day doing it. Just keep a little piece of paper next to the your unit, right at your keyboard, and you can just jot down your notes. So good luck with that. I suggest you start with 2s for each mode to begin, then go to 10, and then decide, after you've examined the graphs, where you want to be somewhere in between there. And each mode is going to have its own setting, I think. This is all new to us as well. That's why we're excited to learn how this is going to go. So good luck, and I'll see you on the other side.